Some of the first games I ever played were top-down RPGs, specifically The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past on SNES and the two titles on Game Boy. So whenever I see a new top-down action RPG, I pay close attention. Fountains is a Souls-like action RPG like nothing I've played before. The charm of the classics, but with the brutality of a modern-day Souls-like. If you're a sucker for nostalgia, but also love to suffer, then it's definitely something that you should check out. Made by a single developer, John Pywell, you can instantly tell a lot of love has been put into this title. It is his first game on Steam, but it absolutely does not feel like that. This is a new segment where I play a new game every month that's been made by an indie developer, and I tell you all about it. So today we're going to be reviewing Fountains. Being a one-man team can be incredibly challenging. You need to be good at art, writing, programming, and maths. So if you want an amazing way to learn math, data analysis, programming, and AI, then you need to check out this video's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is fun and interactive, which means you learn by doing. You don't have to watch lectures or videos, and you can get hands-on and play with these concepts directly. Every lesson is designed to help you truly understand concepts, not just memorize them. Plus, the content is created by experts from places like MIT, Caltech, and Google. Not only does Brilliant help you learn, it helps you become a better thinker. By solving real problems, you're building up those critical thinking skills that you can apply to all areas of your life. If you want to get into programming, you can dive into their Python course and start building your own apps and games straight away with the built-in drag and drop editor. And for math, there's everything from algebra to calculus, all designed to make math practical and fun. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/chefgames or scan the QR code on screen. Or you can click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Let's get back to checking out Fountains. The opening 30 minutes of Fountains is very compelling. It feels incredibly similar to Dark Souls in the way that it sets up its world. And I don't mean that in a bad way. A lot of people take inspiration from Dark Souls and fail, but Fountains is not one of those. Its subtle world building draws you in, leaving you hungry to explore more. The characters that you meet talk just enough to give you a peek into this dark fantasy world, completely ravaged by a tyrannical regime. The music that goes alongside this world building is also incredible. Written by Travis Moberg, it complements this dark, moody atmosphere in the best way possible. The art for this game is incredibly well done. The dark fantasy vibe it gives off, along with its retro aesthetic, hit both nostalgia nerves along with a more modern trend of dark, mysterious, Souls-like vibes it has going on. Something you need to keep in mind is this was all made by one person. So the game design, programming, art, and writing, although there is someone else credited as well for writing, for all of these elements to come together so well, it's incredibly commendable. This is particularly impressive because I feel like a lot of games try to pull off this particular formula and don't succeed. But the combination of artwork and music, plus the choice of the opening, leave me wanting to just explore this world even more. Combat is something that feels really good. This is my first time playing a top-down Souls-like, and I found myself kiting the enemies quite a lot. And this is because rolling and attacking both use stamina, a resource required to do actions, and trying to roll around a lot and attack left me at 0 stamina quite a lot, and taking damage. But if I kited the enemies, I could wait for them to attack and then take a shot and continue kiting. Being a Souls-like, it is an incredibly punishing experience. And the way that they've set the world up with this dark and mysterious feeling, plus knowing how punishing some of the enemies can be, you definitely have that same gravity in terms of exploration as Dark Souls and Elden Ring. You will occasionally see a big enemy ahead, take pause, decide if you want to continue going down that path, and then potentially end up dying because you can't play. It's too powerful, you don't know what it does yet. It's a very fun and intense experience that I quite like. In the same way as Dark Souls and Elden Ring, the world is a labyrinth, and it's an entire sprawling dungeon. Essentially, you can get from one end to the other relatively quickly. As you progress, you'll unlock shortcuts that wrap back around to where you started, And this feels really good in the world, but it also means that you're occasionally stumbling upon bosses that potentially optional, but that's still a really foundational experience that I think is core to that Souls-like world building experience. In Fountains, you get tools that allow you to modify your abilities. So the first one that I got access to was a ring that allowed me to shoot lasers, and it was really helpful for enemies, taking them down from a distance. It costs mana and it allows you to unlock a lot of areas, which is really one of those foundational experiences, especially when it comes to like top-down RPGs. Going back to like Legend of Zelda and those titles, even though they were a lot easier back then, a core part of that experience was getting equipment and unlocking new areas. And so that Metroidvania type feel is definitely there for this game, and it feels incredibly satisfying. Being able to find a piece of equipment and then knowing that something that you weren't able to get to previously and then being able to come back and unlock that area is very, very fulfilling and fun. So the thing with Souls-like games is that often when you rest at one of these resting places, in Fountains, it is literally water fountains, hence the name. So when you rest at a water fountain, generally all the enemies that you have defeated respawn. And this can be either like a good thing or a bad thing. Generally for me, I don't like to sit at a fountain if I don't have to, unless I want to store my respawn point, because you will respawn at the last fountain you rested at, or if I desperately need health, but that's pretty rare in most cases, because Fountains uses a healing mechanic very similar to Hollow Knight. And this is a good system. I like it. I prefer it over the Dark Souls system where you have a limited number of flasks. This feels much nicer because you can continually explore as long as you're able to do more damage and kill more enemies than you take damage. As long as you're doing that, you can explore indefinitely. However, I don't really feel like there's any incentive to rest at one of these fountains unless I'm planning on taking on a boss, or I'm worried that I might get killed by the next area. You don't get any base water refill, which is the same resource that you use to heal yourself. That being said, this isn't breaking any rules of any of the Souls-like games that I've played. You can buy water at a fountain, but getting a base amount would have also been really nice. The other resources that you do get are health and stamina. Health can be increased by finding health stones. You find them all over the map, sometimes after you defeat a difficult enemy, sometimes you just need to unlock an area before getting to it and solving puzzles. It's really fun when you find one and knowing that there's one, and when you get one of those item upgrades and you can rush back to the area where you weren't able to get one before, also feels really good. There are plenty of health stones to be found, and I found myself getting plenty of upgrades as I went along playing. Stamina, however, there are much fewer ways to upgrade. There is a character in the game that does allow you to upgrade some of these resources for a fee, but it is very expensive. There are some items that will increase your stamina as well, but aside from that, those were the only two ways that I found to upgrade stamina. Personally, I feel like it would be nice to give us more options in terms of upgrades. Perhaps when you get a full 4 slot of health stones, rather than being health stones, they could just upgrade any of the resources that you like at your choice. That would have been, I think, a more fun way to go about this, especially if you like to play and roll around a lot or use a lot of abilities that take water. Either way, it feels really good to find these stones. Gear, especially armor, doesn't feel like it gives you much of a benefit, although it does let you combine different stat increases, resistances along with armor. You can have magic resistance, you can have health and stamina and water increases as well, but I often felt like the armor or the resistances weren't protecting me that much. I'm still dying. But that's fine. The stat increases for the water, health, and stamina did feel really nice. For the weapons, there aren't any that change the way you attack, like heavy weapons or ranged weapons. No matter what sword you equip, your attack speed and style will always be the same. The armor, on the other hand, does change your appearance, and it's quite nice to see. The weapons are a little bit better, however, personally, I measure this by how it feels to move through the early segments of the game after you've progressed a little bit. And yes, I went from 3 strikes to kill a basic lackey to 2, which doesn't sound like much, but it's a big enough boost that I can kill a basic enemy before they can strike, which does allow you to move through the world a lot faster. But it also means there isn't really any way to cheese this game. Being so new, maybe down the line, if it gets popular enough, people will be able to find an incredibly powerful weapon that can be used to down bosses and enemies a lot faster, but until then, you're just going to need to get good, because these bosses are no joke. They move fast, and reaction times are around the half-a-second mark. Their movement feels random and unintentional, but the only way to really describe it is pure chaos. Don't worry about healing either, because you're not going to get a moment's rest. Another major gripe I have with the bosses and boss rooms is they're quite large, and because most bosses erratic movement, they will be off-screen flinging projectiles at you, which I think is probably poor design. Being top down and having no camera control, the bosses shouldn't really move outside of your screen, in my opinion. And I find myself comparing it to Elden Ring quite a lot, because it's probably the Souls-like that I've spent most of the time playing. I'm by no means an expert, I've only got 90 hours, and yes, that means I'm basically a noob when it comes to Elden Ring. That being said, the bosses in Elden Ring are very methodical, and you can tell when a hit is coming. In the 3D space, everything is very telegraphed, and it's more about understanding the timing, knowing what can possibly come next so that you can react to that as well, and if you do that right, you should never take damage. However, in Fountains, the abilities often feel kind of random. Commander Varka is a prime example of this, where he might be skating around dropping bombs or just standing around. It doesn't feel very predictable, or at least the rest times between attacks feel incredibly short, and the wind up for some attacks are incredibly short as well. Less than half a second in this case, and that's if you can spot what's happening behind all the other chaos on screen, which in part plays an issue. In my experience playing Dark Souls series, everything is so big and telegraphed, most of the difficulty is knowing the timing. Not that there aren't chaotic moments, of course, in other games, but I feel like there are clear moments of attack, and in Fountains, it just doesn't feel like there are any. Here, it feels like reaction time is king, and I'm not that good at that, but I have managed to learn to look for moments where the AI is struggling and strike then. Or just use the reflect tool, because that negates the need to get too close. The Varka strategy notes were to get in close, but I found that he would just skate off, leaving bombs behind, so I equipped the reflect ring and hit back the projectiles and went melee when he happened to skate into me, rather than me chasing him and missing the frame he brings his axe out, because he also dropped a bomb over and it overlapped and you can only see it for like 1 second. Potentially this is a problem with the pixel art as a choice for this kind of game. Everything is very small, and for a game where the abilities need to be telegraphed so that you can react to them, I think potentially adding in audio cues could help a lot here. That being said, I can't deny that the bosses are designed good, because I've been able to defeat them. While they are incredibly difficult, it's still not as difficult as Elden Ring in my opinion. It's just a different kind of difficult, and they still feel incredibly satisfying to bring down. That feeling of dopamine you get after you've been progressing against a boss for the last, 30 minutes or an hour definitely feels good. And then you get the reward at the end, which is normally an item or a health stone or something like that. And all of that combines to something that feels very good. For an indie game, the experience is not short either. I've racked up over 9 hours already, and I haven't even finished the game yet. Although I do feel like I'm at a point now where I just need to prog the rest of the bosses, since I've explored a vast majority of the areas. I know where everything is, it's just a matter of going to those spots and getting it done, so to speak. So for 20 Australian dollars, this game definitely feels worth it. If you like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, or even Hyper Light Drifter, then this title is something you absolutely need to consider. Overall, I'm quite happy with the game, even though I'm not a pure Dark Souls player by any means. I think the developer should definitely be commended for creating such a rich experience on its own, and if you do pick it up, just be prepared to spend some time fighting those bosses. Alright guys, that's all for this one. Thanks to my Patreons, which you should be seeing these now. This is a new experiment of mine. This year I just wanted to play more indie titles. I wanted to play more new games and just experience to see what other people are creating rather than spending all my time playing games that I've played for the last 20 years and not learning anything new about game design and all that kind of stuff. So as a way of sort of integrating that into what I do here on the channel, I think I'm going to review each game that I play every month. I'm going to try to play a different one every month. It could be an indie developer, it could be a game made with Godot. It doesn't have to be a game made with Godot, but I do want it to be a game made by like an indie developer or something small, something different. So if you have any recommendations, definitely drop them down in the comments. Other than that, I'm Isaac from Chef Games, and I will see you next time.